What is going on, everybody, and welcome into yet another edition of a Rookie Rankings episode here on Dynasty 365. I am, of course, your host for tonight, Aiden Weingartner. With me, I have three of our rankers here, Joseph Harlow, Justin Taylor, and Drew Scott, to go over at this pre-draft process with the combine literally just happening a mere few days ago now. Early running back rankings, specifically a top 10 and a few lingering guides after that. If you are watching live on YouTube right now and would like to support our work, the best thing that you can do on your end is like this video and subscribe to the channel to make sure that you never miss a single show here on the Fantasy and Frames Podcast Network. Gentlemen, let's dive right into the running backs. So similar to QB, we all knew that Fernando Mendoza was all of our QB ones, including us, last week, and we got a special talent at the top this week in Jeremiah Love. Shocker, all four of us, five of you include Jorge, have Jeremiah Love as a special talent at the top. So I want to phrase it like this. In my opinion, of some of the quote-unquote generational RB prospects, at least that we've seen in terms of recent memory, I think Jeremiah Love is, in my personal opinion, is a little above Gianti, but a little below Bijan as a prospect. So, Joe, I want to ask you, number one, do you agree with my kind of assessment there? And number two, in your eyes, what makes Jeremiah Love so special of a prospect?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. The term generational is obviously overused. Everyone says it. The phrase generational is overused. However, if there is an argument for a true purple chip player in this class, it's between Jeremiah Love, Caleb Downs, maybe one or two other guys, and Arvell Reese for rarity, Sonny Styles. Those are the guys in that conversation. Love absolutely belongs in that S-tier purple chipped sort of prospect. I wouldn't put him quite at Bijan's level, but he's as close as we've seen. I have him comparable to Jahmyr Gibbs, though he's a bit bigger. So that alone puts him above. And I was a massive Gibbs fan. I had him top 10 overall for NFL in that class. Love is the real deal. I think he's absolutely worth the 101 in a super flex. I always still lean quarterback, even in high-level classes for other positions or a non-purple chip sort of quarterback, like we talked about last week with Mendoza.
Yeah.
But Love with the skill set as a fully all-around player, great runner in all aspects, all schemes, incredible receiving work, and he's turning into a pretty decent blocking player, pass blocker. He's not great, but getting there.
Progressed, yeah.
Yeah, he's progressing, has the size, the talent, the physicality, all the tools you need to become one. So he's the whole package. He's the full deal. I think he has a real argument to be the highest graded player overall in this class. And if he goes to a right spot, hopefully he doesn't go to a committee or a spot where he can at least get like 70% of touches, which would be good for him. So as long as he gets that, he's easily in the 101, 102 at the absolute worst.
Yeah, the last time we saw a running back go top 5 was, if I'm not mistaken, Saquon Barkley did the New York Giants all those years ago.
Sounds right.
Yeah, but there's some chatter out there that Cardinals aren't real satisfied with Trey Benson, and they could take Jeremiah Love as number 3 overall. So, JT, speaking of that, I want to throw it to you. Whether it's the Cardinals or some other top 5 to 10 landing spot at minimum for Jeremiah Love, when it's all said and done, once Love is actually drafted, where could you personally see yourself placing Love in your Dynasty startup rankings?
So if you're looking at just running back wise, I definitely think you could look at him as a top 5 for sure. As far as running back wise, I've got him. We talked about it just a little bit. I have him right there with Bijan Robinson. To me, they're very similar guys as far as like when they came out of college, kind of what we were looking at, the expectations. I really feel like those guys are right in line. I think I really like Jeanty, and I think Jeanty's going to be better once the Raiders are not horrible on the offensive line. I think Jeanty's going to be a lot better. I think Love's right between those two guys. So I would be like Bijan just slightly ahead of Love, and then Love slightly ahead their, but that's where I think he's top 5. I don't think there's any reason to not take him 5. Like Joe said, unless it's just one of the worst landing spots of all time, which I don't think we're going to see. Even if he doesn't in a perfect landing spot, I think the talent wins out with him. So I'm not worried. He's one of the guys I'm least worried about where they land. There's a lot of these other guys in this draft. I'm really nervous about where they end up landing. I think Love ends up being the 101 no matter what. And I definitely think with a prime landing spot, even not with a prime landing spot, I still think he's in that top 5, top 6 RB startup. I think we're right
in the right spot. I think you could make an argument for him to be RB3 for Dynasty. I think that'd be quite aggressive. That's not probably where I would put him, but I think after Gibbs and Bijan, especially with CMC aging, Genty and Hampton having injuries or subpar first years for whatever reason, JT, Achane having their issues with their teams, injuries, Achane being a smaller back, you can make an argument. But again, I think it'd be a tad aggressive, but it says a lot about his talent that you can find a way to make that argument.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, if I still think JT's a top 3 to 5 running back. Now, in a brand new startup, is it going to be hard to draft him a little that high at 27? Possibly. If you are in strategy where you're like more of a win now and you're taking like prime guys right off the bat, I think you maybe move JT up in your rankings. If you're doing that, if you're going, hey, I'm going classic age variant, and I want to take the youngest guys and I want to build for a long, long future, then I definitely think, just on the age, the fact that Love hasn't taken a ton of beating in college and didn't get absolutely a million carries, plus, just elite athlete in high school, was an elite recruit. So it's not like he just came out of nowhere. To me, I think you could justify him to taking him up that high.
Yeah. I agree. I think he is landing spot proof. And like I said, there's been some rumblings that he could go as high as number 3 to the Arizona Cardinals, which would be awesome as a top 5 running back. Moving past Jeremiah Love, as special as they come, we have a next 3 pack of players, if you will, in some sort of fashion between Jonah Coleman, Jadarian Price, and Emmett Johnson from Nebraska. Drew, I want to flip it over to you specifically. You and JT have Jonah Coleman both as your personal RB2. Walk us through the skill set, why you have him as RB2, anything you want to throw out about Jonah Coleman.
First, Coleman aside, I think whenever it comes down to it, I'm probably not going to be the one drafting whoever the RB2 in this class ends up being. Unless one of these guys we're talking about gets round 2 draft capital, then I might be in on what their costs may be. But if Love being drafted in the first is the only running back drafted in the first 2 rounds, the RB2, whoever that ends up being, it's probably going to be, which I wouldn't blame the NFL. It wouldn't shock me if that was the case, if we didn't see another running back come off the board until round 3. But I spent a good part of the last month trying to decipher between those 3 guys that you listed off. They're my RB2 to RB4. I've been going back and forth for like a month straight now, and I finally landed on Jonah Coleman about a week ago after watching a little bit more and doing a little bit more digging as my personal second favorite running back in this class. He's an early producer. He had over 1,100 total yards in his sophomore year at Arizona. That was only second behind just Tedero and McMillan in total scrimmage yards for Arizona that year. Thought that was pretty cool. Career numbers of 5.5 yards per carry, 9.4 yards per reception, 1.22 yards per route run across his college career. Nothing that's like elite, but it's also nothing that's low enough to where you would consider it a red flag either. It's a pretty solid production profile overall, in my opinion, based on what I look at. I think he's a solid athlete. I do understand why he didn't test at the combine, since the testing numbers were unlikely to really help him. I don't think he would have ran fast enough for him to go flying up NFL teams' draft boards. I don't think that his numbers would have necessarily hurt him either. But if you're not going to clearly boost your draft stock, why even compete in the drill? So I understood that part. It would have been nice to see him run the 40. He didn't need to be the fastest running back at the combine with the skill set that he has. But whenever you look at the consensus top 15 running backs in Dynasty right now, 13 of the 15 ran at least a 4.5. And so it would have at least been nice to see him check that box. I don't need him to run a 4.3, nothing like that. But if he could have just check that off for me, I would feel a little bit better. But whenever it comes down to it, you can poke holes really of any of these guys after Jeremiah Love. And I think the combination of early college production and the 3-down skill set that he possesses gives him the slight edge over the rest of this class for me.
Yeah. So in the past, just the last few weeks in my head, I've been comping in terms of build and skill set. Obviously, Jonah Coleman might have a bit better than draft capital than this guy, but I've been comping to someone like Bucky Irving. Am I off on that, or is that fair?
I don't think it's a terrible comp. I think athletically they're probably pretty similar. So I see where you're coming from.
Yeah.
My comp for him that I've heard around as well is he's a smaller Josh Jacobs, which Jacobs obviously was younger coming out, he was 20 or 19 when getting drafted.
Yeah, super young.
That was
he's massive, but Coleman plays very similar. I think Irving's also a decent comp there. There's no perfect comps at running back, but somewhere on that spectrum of players. And with Coleman being smaller, maybe you have the Bucky Irving style as well.
Yeah. I was just talking about not the best athlete, not the best combine performance. Jonah Coleman probably knew that too. Mm-hmm. So I personally have Jadarian Price from Notre Dame as my RB2. And why is that the case, you might ask? Well, for one, it's very impressive that he was literally sharing a backfield with a special talent in Jeremiah Love and still put up over 600 rushing yards. Now, everyone says Jadarian Price ran a slow 40. Jadarian Price had a bad combine. I was never being a Notre Dame fan, watching him every week in and week out, I was never expecting him to be this high-level athlete. I think people were overrating his athleticism. I don't think he's some burner. But his ball carrier vision is really high level already. He's a pretty good pass protector already. So I think that lends himself to the field. And yeah, he's not going to give you anything in the receiving game. I'm pretty sure he had 15 or 16 career catches at Notre Dame over 3 years. So that's a red flag and a concern. But as an early down grinder who offers some more speed and burst than you might think, combine numbers aside, I really like Jadarian Price. And Joe, it seems like you also have Price as your RB2, so you're with me here.
Yeah, so I'm not as worried about his receiving profile. I think the Jeremiah Love of it all really hurt Price there.
No wonder, yeah.
Yeah. So, and I know, like Drew had said, Coleman and Price together, they're 2-3 for sure. I actually have Coleman rated a little higher for NFL, so I think Price will go 15, 20 picks higher. I think there's some more untapped potential in there. I could totally see him becoming a top 10, 12 running back in the perfect storm situation. The athletic metrics weren't crazy, like you said, but he's a functional athlete. And I think he's one of those guys who looks a lot more athletic on film than he does necessarily in shorts. He's going to be a kick return specialist as well, which with the new dynamic kickoff, that if you have that sort of scoring in your leagues, that's just another boost for him and a few of these running backs in the class. I like both. I think both are worth a mid to late first round pick in your fantasy drafts.
Yeah. Before we continue on, I want to touch on a bit of a controversial topic or player, excuse me. There's a lot of opinions on this guy coming out of the combine because he didn't test very well and people see all sorts of different things on tape, and that is Emmett Johnson. So quickly, we're just going to go around to each analyst. Joe, sticking with you, what are your thoughts on Emmett Johnson as a prospect right now?
He did not have a bad combine, first of all. He had the worst combine because the slow people don't run anymore.
I meant to relative to who tested.
No. And that's, people said it throughout, not just you, Aiden, but people have said, oh, he had a terrible combine. He was terrible.
In general, no.
But that's why they set a record for 40-yard dash in every position, I think it was this year.
Yeah, every single.
And a lot of that's the freaks like Kenyon Sadiq, Eli Stowers, but
people don't run as much anymore now. So.
Yeah, I think there were 10 or 12 running backs who ran a 40. Lot. So
not a lot.
And two of them were full. One was a former quarterback, another was a fullback. I think he's a good player. I don't think he's super exciting, but I think he could be a very the David Montgomery sort of role. I don't know if he's that level of player per se, but put him with a dynamic third down back, kind of what the Colts had hoped for Jonathan Taylor and Nyheim Hines, be the more bruiser or more of, I guess, Marlon Mack, that sort of role, just a bruiser, someone who's solid, good, has some more third down ability when needed, but yeah, bruiser's not the right word, but steady is
physical,
more the word for.
Yeah. JT, what's your quick analysis / eval of Emmett Johnson?
From the film I've watched, he makes guys miss, but he does a lot of the same moves over and over again. And
it's the same cut over and over.
It feels like it's a lot of the same play. And so it's like he does that. He has decent burst off. We also saw, obviously, in the 40, didn't have a great 40 time, 4.56. I have to tell you who he kind of reminds me of, and this isn't necessarily a good thing, so I hate to say this, but I was not really big at all on Caleb Johnson coming out last year. I know some people were super high on him. I was not, just because from when I watched him, it's not that he wasn't good. It's his O-line was so freaking good that I was like, man, it's going to be tough to have just those clear opening holes for him to just get up to speed and go at the next level. And we saw that. We saw that last year. As a Steelers fan, I'm still hoping they get something out of him. But to me, Emmett Johnson feels like a 4th round pick in the NFL draft. Now, the right landing spot, could we see him as like a late 1st rounder, early 2nd in fantasy? I absolutely think that's probably where you're going to see him.
You won't be.
I kind of just think of this, Cam Scatabo, went in the 4th last year. Obviously a good situation with the Giants as they needed another running back to go with Tyrone Tracy. And so even though he was a 4th round pick, most people were grabbing him near the end of the 1st, top of the 2nd round. I think you're going to see the same thing with Emmett Johnson. I think Caleb Johnson, people just, if it wasn't him going to the Steelers, I don't think he would have been drafted as high. I think people just thought, okay, he's going to take over that number 1 role for Najee. And I was like, he's not as good as Najee Harris. I'm sorry. If you don't like Najee, why are you drafting Caleb Johnson? People didn't listen to me, took him anyway. Hopefully, it's a learning curve last year. But again, I think we're going to see a lot with Emmett Johnson kind of in the same realm. It's not that I don't think he could be a good player, but he's also a player. I think if he ends up on a team with a bad line, it could get ugly. It really could get – not that he can't make 3 or 4 guys miss, but he's going to make 3 or 4 guys miss and lose 2 yards. So that's where I'm a little bit nervous about him, is that I don't think he's a bad player. So I feel like I'm always ripping him. I don't think he's a bad player at all. I definitely think if he ends up on the right team, he would move up in my eyes as far as fantasy value. But right now I'm very, very cautious. And where I've seen him go in mocks, I will just have to say, I'm just not taking him because if he falls to me, I'd take him. Same thing happened with Caleb Johnson last year. If he fell to me in drafts, I took him, but I wasn't reaching for him. I wasn't trying to go out of my way to grab him.
Yeah, I like Emmett Johnson. Starting with the positives, in my opinion, he's a very smooth pass catcher, and I like the trajectory he was on in college. Basically got better every single year with more and more volume. Obviously, this past season, the most volume of his career by far, over 1,000 rushing yards, and I already mentioned the pass catching stuff. But on the negative, to
85 catches in 2 years. It's a lot.
Yeah, very smooth, very, very smooth and impressive pass catcher. Thank you for the exact numbers. I couldn't remember. But Drew and JT, you guys mentioned how he's kind of a one-trick pony in the sense that he needs more variety in the skill set, if you will, especially in the pure running game. And if he does that in the NFL, he's going to be a guy that's going to get stuffed at the line or stuffed behind the line. He's going to be one of these inefficient rushers. Hopefully, a good landing spot to great landing spot can mask some of that inefficiency. But if he gets in a bad landing spot, the inefficiency could really show out in a bad way, unfortunately. So I'm kind of indifferent on Emmett Johnson. I'll have to go back to the tape. I'll have to see some deeper metrics updated after the combine. I don't think he has true breakaway speed. I think people are hating on him too much. Joe, you mentioned it for the 40. Circumstances are changed these days, but I think people are hating on him too much. He has functional athleticism, probably similar to Jadair Price in the athleticism department. I don't know if he has that breakaway speed, but I like his initial burst and contact balance. Drew, all that being said, close the curtain on Emmett Johnson for us.
Yeah, I mean, for me, he was RB4 pre-combine for me. He's RB4 post-combine. There really wasn't much that changed.
Yeah.
I saw there was actually, it was today, I saw a really interesting note from Alfredo Brown at Alfredo A. Brown over on Twitter, if you're not following him already.
Great follow, yeah.
So Emmett Johnson, 5.78 RAS. That's what he came away with after after the combine testing that everybody was freaking out about. Pretty interesting note. There have been 433 running backs that have posted a sub 6 RAS since 2000, but only 17 have matched Emmett Johnson's single season college production, which was over 1,000 rush yards plus 30 receptions. So looking at the running back prospects that had single season 1,000 rushing yards, 30 receptions, and had a sub 6 RAS score, 11 of the 17 still had a fantasy season where they averaged 12 plus fantasy points per game. So, look, not a perfect hit rate, but still pretty decent for whatever you consider the athletic scoring and how much everybody was freaking out. And that's groups of running backs like Dalvin Cook, Kyron Williams, Bucky Irving, Kyrie Irving, Devonta Freeman, David Montgomery, Kareem Hunt, Kenneth Gainwell. I was trying to read two names at once. Zach Moss, Myles Gaskin, Tariq Cohen, CEH. The names get less impressive.
These are some weird
down
names.
The list, but it is a strange group. But just kind of goes to show you that the RAS score doesn't have to be the end all be all, and that means this guy just has no path to production in the NFL, because that's not necessarily true. So it would have liked to see the production come earlier in his college career, but it is good to see that even whenever the volume increased, his efficiency still either remained the same or got better as well. So you typically, whenever a guy takes on more volume, if he doesn't really have the talent, then that efficiency is going to dip. And that wasn't the case with him on the receiving end or the rushing end. The yards per carry, the yards per reception, they just kept going up as he kept getting more volume. So that's encouraging to see. And so just wanted to kind of also add that little tidbit in there that maybe the RAS score isn't the death knell.
Yeah, it seems like consensusly, guys, to one degree or another, we're all kind of split on Emmett Johnson. We see the positives, we see the negatives, and everything in between. Before we move on to our next set of running backs here tonight, please do not forget that you could search for each and every podcast here at Fantasy and Frames by name on, of course, your preferred podcast platform of choice. For us specifically, please subscribe to the Dynasty 365 podcast. Also, important note, make sure to head over to fantasyandframes.com, where we have tons of articles coming out on a near daily basis at this point. Redraft, IDP, Dynasty, whatever you want, we got it covered and catered for you all over there. Also important this time of year, if you want discussions or opinions beyond just these live shows tonight and other nights, last week, whatever, then our first batch of rookie rankings from both a consensus and individual perspective is live on all of these players. So with all that out of the way, all four of us on the screen right now that do rankings for the site have different players that were quote unquote the high man on outside the consensus top four. So we're going to play, I guess you could call it a game here, where you're too low on, enter said player. Each of us will go over a player we really like and then kind of debate it with a couple other people. JT, you have Nick Singleton a lot higher than consensus at RB4. Why is that the case?
I still believe in the talent for Singleton. Now, he had a down year. Obviously, was hoping he would be at the combine, but the broken foot kept him out. He's one of the guys that the combine would have helped him because he's just an absolute complete top end athlete. So that's where I was like, I wish I would have saw him here, but part of me is like, okay, maybe that makes everyone else not draft him as high. I hate to see I say that, but I still really like him. The down year as a senior, is going to be the knock on him. The fact that he stayed. If he would have came out last year, he would have went much higher. He also would have been in a much more stacked class last year. So I still think he can go pretty high in this draft class because I just don't think this draft class is that great overall. And there's just so many question marks. So my thought is, if I'm going to go with question mark guys, I want to go with the guy that has the elite athletic traits, which He does. We're looking at he's probably less than a 4.40. I mean, he's right in that 4.4, 4.38, 4.39. Guy's got exceptional speed. Even though he stayed all of college, he still just turned 22. So it's not like he's one of these guys that are like 23, going to be 24 at the start of the season. He literally just turned 22 like 2 months, 22 2 months ago. So great size, 6 foot. He's probably going to end up playing weight somewhere between 215 and 220, which I love. The biggest thing for him is got to get him in the right system, right? He's got to get a system where they can create lanes and he can one cut and burst through the hole. If he has to read the hole, figure out where it's going to be, make multiple looks, I think we're in trouble. We're going to get a guy that's going to run into the line a lot, and we're going to be like, why did he cut that back? Because he's not going to see it. He doesn't have great vision. So if you can get him in a type of team like almost like a McDaniels offense at Miami with A-Chain, where you're like, hey, can you get him in like a one cut and let him use his athleticism? Let him just take off. That's where I think you're going to see Singleton successful at the next level. If he gets into a complicated offensive system where they're like having him take and make multiple reads to figure out what hole he needs to take, then I'm going to be probably lower on him because I'm just not sure he has that ability right now. Now, can you work on that? Yes. Yes, you can work on that. But I coached running backs a lot of years. Teaching vision, you can kind of give kids hints, but teaching vision is very hard to do. It's very instinctual. So guys that don't have it, you can give them pointers, but it's hard to convince them all of a sudden to become good at reading the blocks and good at reading where they should go if they don't know kind of already to do it. So I'm purely taking him on just the fact that he was an absolute elite athlete coming out of high school. He was an elite athlete who had an early breakout in college, absolutely outstanding freshman year. He just had a worse senior year than he had freshman year, which, that hurts. That hurts. But I still like him. He's a guy I think could have went possibly late second round, early third in another year. I think this year with all the things around him, I think he's going to drop in the draft. I think he's a fourth rounder to me. I think there's a team that maybe if he fits them perfectly would go late third, but I think he's an early fourth round pick.
RJ Harvey, with all the flaws he had when end of rounds of the second round last year, I could see Singleton, who's a lot younger and frankly more athletic. Not that I don't like Harvey, but go at the end of the third. Kind of think could see him sneaking in
if
there.
You get that coach that loves him, right, Joe? If you get that coach just like, he fits exactly, which I think is kind of what Harvey happened, right? They liked what he did for their system. I agree with you. I think he should have went second round last year if he would have came out what he did. I would have taken him over.
He might be the best blocking back in the class, which is going to keep him on the field, unless he has the Travion Henderson thing where he just forgets how to do it at the next level. The 91 catches over 3 years with, again, Saquon level athleticism. Penn State always has these freaks. But then turning him down for Katron at the end of the year is concerning.
Yeah.
I hate to say it, JT, but I'm not a fan. I got Nick Singleton at RB7. Even in this quote-unquote weaker class, if you would. You mentioned it. Number one trait I'm concerned about, he has pretty poor ball carrier vision. And if you don't get that in 4 years in college, 99.9% sure it's not going to change in the NFL. If you're dancing around too much and constantly getting tackled at or behind the line of scrimmage, you're never going to get momentum and you're absolutely never going to get going. Now, when he gets in the open field, he has legit breakaway track speed. But it takes him a while to gear up to that level from the line of scrimmage. I fear, because he broke his foot in the Senior Bowl, so he may be behind the 8 ball in rookie camp, wherever he lands. More specifically, training camp this summer, wherever he lands. So I fear that he's going to be pigeonholed into a mid-day 3 pick, unfortunately, who's just going to be a receiving option, who's never going to be near a refined rusher. So for all those reasons, I am on the total opposite end of this, where I have Nick Singleton at RB7 for all those concerns I just laid out. Now, Joe, I'm a big fan of this player. Talk to us about Damond Claiborne from Wake Forest.
Another third down type of back. He's smaller, which is a concern. However, in its pretty shallow class, I think you got to take a shot on someone with some athleticism, on some ability to really to take limited touches and make something with it. The 4.37 40 tracks. He was a state champion runner in high school. I know. Not a strong pass blocker, which is a concern. I love my pass pro running backs, but good hands. He has a pretty good understanding with vision in a zone scheme. One of those Shanahan style scheme, give him space, like we talked about with some other guys. He can make some carries, break some tackles, make a lot of yards on a very few amount of carries. Again, with not a lot of players in this class, this is a guy who I really like. I think I have him as like a 4th round true grade, but
me too.
The sort of athletic ability, it's like might as well, especially if you're not going for a singleton, but someone else this guy will have a role as, again, kick returner, which is going to be massive still.
Yeah, better athleticism.
The ball last year was concerning, but 5 fumbles, I think, last year, but I think he had 1 in his previous few years. So willing to chalk it up to just a massive uptick in carries, but from his first year or two. But overall, I really like him as a flyer, someone who can be a flex sort of play for your lineups. And then if there's an injury ahead of him, then maybe have a blow up game or two.
Drew, I'm looking here. You got Claiborne all the way down to RB11. What are you not seeing with this player?
I do, man. I might be a little too low, but I struggle putting him in front of the guys that I have in front of him right now. I mean, the obvious red flag that Joe mentioned right off the rip is the size. 5'10", 188 is less than ideal, but at least he has the speed to offset it. What's the thing that they say? You can be slow or you can be small, but you just can't be both. And Claiborne is most certainly not both. The 40, I think, is evidence of that, is that he might be small, but he has the speed. So can help balance that out a little bit. But even outside of the size concerns, I have concerns whenever I look at his college production profile as well. He didn't top 1,000 total yards until his junior season. His career numbers: 4.7 yards per carry, 7.7 yards per reception, 0.96 yards per route run. All of which are less than ideal and below the thresholds that you typically want a running back prospect to be over for them to generally see success at the next level. I'm not saying that he can't be successful at the next level by any means. I know the NFL loves their big play threats, the guys with yak ability. I get that, but with his size and production profile, he looks like someone that, if he does hit, is going to be somewhat of an outlier. And there's other guys that, if I have to lay my pre-draft bets on who I think the better running back is, there's other guys at the position that I prefer to make that bet on. But if the NFL thinks differently and he's the first guy off the board on day 3 or something along those lines, then I'll definitely have to reevaluate at that point. But right now, I would have to bet against him.
Yeah, Drew,
I totally get that as the Claiborne guy. I really think you can make an argument between, after the top 4 we talked about, for the next 12 guys.
Whole cluster,
order pretty much anyway. I get it.
Yeah. Speaking of making an argument, Drew, sticking with you, you seem to be a big fan of Jamari Taylor, RB7, huh?
Yeah, this is my soft spot for this running back class. This is the guy that I've kind of I've fallen for, I guess you could say. He doesn't have the early college production that I typically look for either. He didn't hit 1,000 total yards until he finished with over 1,400 total yards in his senior season at North Carolina Central University. A smaller school, took him a little while to get going. It's cool underdog story. But after that successful senior season, he was able to transfer to Virginia for his 5th year, and that it's his only serious year. It's his only year against serious competition, but he was impressive on the field for Virginia as well. Over 1,300 total yards, 15 touchdowns, almost 5 yards per carry. And then he has the career number over 5 yards per carry, over 9 yards per reception, 1.4 yards per route run. Like his college production profile is pretty strong. He just the early production wasn't there. He was not a high profile high school prospect coming. He wasn't highly rated, anything like that. So he really had to work and earn his way on. But he was one of those guys that he just kept getting more opportunities and he kept doing well with them. And so he kept making it to where coaching staffs couldn't take him off the field. And so he did come in right under that magic 200-pound number that we want to see for running backs, but I don't think his size is necessarily an issue. He has a 3-down skill set, and while he might not be as explosive of an athlete as some of the other names in this class, I think he's just a better pure runner, and I think he's a more complete back than some of these guys with better athleticism are. He's not going to be a better athlete than these guys, but I think he's just better at the position. Now, he's kind of similar to his story, the way it's working so far with him being an underdog. He's very likely going to be a day 3 pick. He's going to have to work his way up a depth chart. But
special teams,
yeah, he's going to be a special teamer. He's going to be a guy that, is going to be the third running back on his team, most likely to start out his career. He's going to have to work his way up. But if he does eventually work his way up to an RB2 spot, and then the guy in front of him gets hurt, I'm not going to be shocked if the weight like he has throughout his college career, once he gets on the field at the NFL level, if he makes it really difficult for that NFL team to draft him and to take him back off the field, because I think he's going to be able to take advantage of the opportunities once he gets it. So might take him a little bit to get there. You're probably going to have to be patient, but I like what the production profile tells me. Whenever I turned on the tape, I love what I saw on there. So I know running back 7 is probably a little high, and the draft capital is not likely to be there. So I'm probably going to have to, adjust somewhat once the draft comes by. But I really, really liked what I saw from Jamar Taylor.
Yeah.
I have to say, he's my bet for someone to look at in like 8 years and be like, holy shit, he's still in the league? Like, it's still like, I think he's, like we talk about the Dalton line for quarterbacks. I think he is that for running back prospects. He's just good player. Darn good players.
I got an old school guy for you, and shocker, I'm going to use a Steeler, but Fast Willie Parker, man. I feel like he could be that type of guy if he gets on the right team that has a bigger, stronger bodied running back, and they need that guy that is like the speed guy that's offsetting. Willie Parker wasn't an every down guy, but he had Jerome Bettis there, right? And Willie Parker had some pretty good fantasy seasons, even though he was never like a super highly drafted player in fantasy, and obviously a guy that didn't go high in the NFL draft. I think Jamar Taylor in the right spot could be that type of player. He had a 1,500-yard
rushing season.
I know, it's crazy, right? You don't think that happens, but like he actually was pretty solid because they gave him the opportunity to find the lines, which I think actually Jamar Taylor, that's where he's good at compared to Singleton. He actually is good at reading and kind of finding that gap and hitting it. So I think you put him on the right team with a nice backup where he's like not having to be the guy, but he's in the mix all the time. He's getting a couple series. He's getting plays here and there. I do think he's a guy that could eventually hit. I'm with Drew and even Joe here. I actually have moved him up my rankings since I originally put him out. I've got him up to 7 in my rankings. I just like the possibilities that he could get you, and the right landing spot in the draft might push him up even more for me. I just like him. He's probably the chance of him actually hitting out of the right out of the bat as a rookie is just super minimum, but he is a guy I think has all the skills that could be a good player, especially if given the opportunity on the right team.
Yeah.
It can't be all sunshine and rainbows, though, right? So, Joe, I know that you were the low man on Jamar Taylor. Sounds like you still have some okay things to say about him, but maybe,
honestly, that was surprising
I think we'd be
to see.
The show if we didn't give the other side of it.
RB13.
I was really surprised. I don't think he should be that low. I need to update my rankings, but I actually have him as my running back 8 NFL wise, right behind Damon Claiborne.
Oh, nice.
We just talked about for me. So
moving on out.
He's one of those guys who there's some other players who we'll talk about. I think 3 of them, so I won't spoil names, 3 or 4 of them, so I won't spoil names, but who might just a little more electric. So that's where the weird fantasy versus NFL gets weird. And running back is a place where I struggle with that. It's like, I think these guys are really good, but they're not the most fantasy. They don't have the highest fantasy projections. I like Taylor a lot. So,
yeah,
I like to hear that. Jorge, I tweeted that out just a few days ago, and honestly, I'm still there. I know that Mike Washington had the incredible combine, and we'll talk. We will talk about Mike Washington, so I won't get into the negatives yet. I will let Aiden at least talk about the positives first. But I think Jamari Taylor is a better running back than Mike Washington. I do. Now, running back and athlete are not. Yeah, running back and athlete are not the same thing. But I think Taylor is a better running back. But nonetheless, we'll save the negative for a second. Aiden, you're the high man on the look. I'll say this much: us three that are all apparently lower on Mike Washington.
I'm on my own here, then. Okay.
You're on your own in this room, but we're the ones kind of on an island whenever it comes to like.
I think we might be the only three who don't love him.
On the planet.
I think like this is the only three people in the fantasy industry that aren't high on Mike Washington. So while you might be the lone man on this show, you're more so in line with consensus on being high. You're the high man on Mike Washington. You've got him up at running back 5. Us three are pretty low. So. I don't think you necessarily have to sell the audience. It sounds like they're already with you. Most of the consensus is already with you. So why don't you try to sell us on why we're too low on Mike Washington?
So I'll get a quick caveat out of the way. As you mentioned, Drew, for me, he RB5 right now for me. Some people said after the combine, I have him as my RB2. That's a bit ludicrous to me. I like Mike Washington a lot, but RB2, RB3, come on. RB4, RB5, RB6, somewhere in there. I have my RB5. Yes, I know you're going to bring up the production profile. 5 years in college. It took him at 3 schools to really get going. But each time he has tiered up, UB to New Mexico State to Arkansas. And it's very impressive, in my opinion at least, in my eyes at least, that he finally broke out at an SEC school. That's the one year he broke out against SEC defenses. And I know we're going to talk about athleticism. Running a fourth, what was it? 4-3-3 or something?
4-3-3. 4-3-2. 4-3-3. 3.
Yeah, somewhere on there. Running a high 4-3s is one thing, but running high 4-3s at 223 pounds officially, that's pretty wild. I think that's
pretty wild. Yeah,
he has a perfect RAS, if I'm not mistaken. That's the best RAS for a running back of all time, like number 1 all time in the combine since they've been tracking that for however many years. So that's my case for Mike Washington. I really basically 2 bullet points. 1, running that at his size, and 2, he teared up every time in college. And although it took him 5 years, he finally broke out at the highest level possible against SEC defenses at Arkansas.
He is one of 7 running backs since whenever RAS database starts that has a perfect 10.
Okay, so
Justin Fargas, Edgerrin James, and then a few guys who everyone else was before I was born. So
Edgerrin James, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Drew, I was going to say, here's one of the reasons I'm down on him. Not only the late production. Arkansas, man, I tell you what, they had some athletes the last couple of years that you're like, where were these guys at? Like during game days, not a glowing recommendation of the coaching staff at Arkansas because, man, they've had some unreal athletes that just didn't hardly do anything the last couple of years. It's kind of sickening, to be honest with you. If I was a Razorback fan, I'd be real upset. A number that really stood out to me, Ian Horowitz put it out on Twitter is where I stole this, so I want to give him credit. He put out some of the top 2026 running backs and their collegiate touches and then fumbles and fumble percentages.
Oh, yeah.
Number 1 was Desmond Reed from Pittsburgh, only 1 fumble and 614 carries. Number 2 was Jeremiah Love, 1 fumble and 495 touches. Right behind that was Jamari Taylor, 2 fumbles with 675 touches. Bunch of other guys in there. Guess who was absolute last on the list? Mike Washington. 655 carries, 12 touchdowns, double the fumbles. 4 guys in front of him. Yeah. Double the amount of fumbles the 4 guys in front of him. 1.83% of his touches turned into fumbles compared to a best for Reed was 0.16 and Jeremiah Love was 0.2. Washington had 1.83%. This is why I'm nervous about him. We know the NFL. If you turn the ball over, you better be freaking amazing and amazing all the time.
Antonio
or you're going to get sad. You're going to get sad if you fumble the football. It's just the way it works. How many guys? I mean, Antonio Gibson, my guy. Oh, can't stay on the field because every time he gets on and makes a good play, he turns around with a fumble. That really makes me nervous on top of being a 5th-year breakout. 655 carries, 12 fumbles. Claiborne, next lowest to him, he had 613 carries. He had 6 fumbles. We already talked about a little bit of Claiborne's fumble issues. He had 6. Katron Allen had 6 on 838 carries, so he had almost 200 more. He had half the fumbles. Singleton right in that boat. He also had 6 fumbles at 727 carries. And then Seth McGowan, a guy we haven't talked about, but he had 6 fumbles and 433. So he had the next highest percent fumbles at 1.39% behind Washington. So I'm a little worried about Washington. The combine was awesome. I mean, the res was awesome. It's everything you want to see out of him. Fantastic for him. My worry is with guys like him. Sometimes we see it every year. We almost always get a tight end, a defensive end that just puts up a ridiculous RAS score, but you realize they're workout warriors. They're those guys that are in the gym like 3 times a week. That's all they do is work out. And then you get them on the football field and you're just like, the coaching staff's like, why can't he be as good at football as he is at working out? I feel like that's what Washington is. I feel like he's a guy that, like, dude, he's the man in your workout room. He's the best guy you have in your workout room. But when you get him on the football field, it doesn't necessarily translate. That is what the scary thing for me is. I think he's going to get overdrafted, which is why I think I'm going to have very little of him, because I just don't think I'm going to want to pay the price. Right now, he is running back 11 for me, and there's a couple guys I probably want more than him, but just if I was going value-wise, I would take him in front thinking that I could trade him. But I'm really worried that this is a workout warriors situation where you get that DN that gets a 10-0 score, and you wonder why he only had 2 sacks in all of college, and then you get the NFL and you're like, oh, dang it, still is a workout warrior, but still can't actually get to the quarterback. I'm worried about that being Washington.
Yeah, that I want to get on board. I really do, because like you turn on the Arkansas tape and it's absolutely fun to watch. I'm not going to sit here and try to say that it wasn't a joy to watch, but I struggle to get over that production hurdle. I really do. Like, if you are that good of a running back, why did it take you until year 5 to get over 1,000 total yards? Why were the only 2 seasons in your career that you went over 5 yards a carry? Your freshman year, whenever you only had 23 carries, and then not again until your final year at Arkansas. And I know it's encouraging to see the production happen at Arkansas, because, it just means more at the SEC and all that good stuff. But like, at that point, whenever you're in your 5th year and you're playing against a bunch of guys younger than you, like you should be outperforming those guys at that point, even in the SEC. If you're worth anything at that point, whenever you're that much more advanced, your body's that much farther along, especially whenever you are a physical specimen the way that Mike Washington Jr. is. That's kind of what you would expect and what you would hope to see. And then, like, you just look at, career numbers: under 5 yards per carry, under 7 yards per reception, 0.77 yards per route run. Like, JT mentioned the fumbling issues. It's just like, I know he's big, I know he's fast, but you still need to be a really good running back. And I just don't know if the tools are there. I don't know if the traits are there. I know that I know the size and the speed's there. I do understand that. But where I think I'm going to have to end up raising him a little bit is that while the combine might not mean a lot to us, I know there's at least one NFL team that watched Mike Washington and was like, holy
I would bet
shit,
he's a second
we
round
gotta
pick.
have this guy. Yeah, and at that point, you have to move him up. If you don't have to, with the way with the way that I am, with the way my process works, how heavily I weigh draft capital, I will have to move him up. At that point, I'm not going to love it because I don't personally believe in the player, but I defer to draft capital over what my own eyes see on tape. And so, but until that happens, I'm going to be lower than consensus. If I'm in rookie drafts that are happening before the NFL draft for some reason, I'm not going to be the one that takes Mike Washington. He's going to go off the board before I'm comfortable taking him every single time. So he's a tough one for me, because the 5th year film is a lot of fun to watch, but prior to that year, there was a lot that was left to be desired.
It feels very Xavier Leggett from a different position, of course.
Not a fan at all. I was not in.
It feels very similar. Just absolute specimens who didn't do much of anything until they were 23. Then
he was
now
25 almost.
Yeah, but Leggett, like, if he had landed in a better spot, right coaching, whatever, could have been great with Washington. If he lands in the right spot, it could absolutely blow up. It's just, I'm not impressed with him in the receiving game. I know he had 28 catches, which is a solid number. And then the pass pro, I'm just not. I don't see a lot of easy ways for him to get on the field aside from, hey, look at this big fast dude. Let's see what we can do. But
Drew, let's just reveal it now. Where is he in your RB rankings? I'm just curious.
I've got it. I do have him up at 8, so I'm not the low man either. JT has him lower than me. I have him up at 8. And to be honest with that, part of that is no. Honestly, it's not even the class. Because there's running backs that I will personally like more that I think are better running backs that I have behind him. But I am somewhat already hedging my bets on the draft capital he's going to get by having him at 8. If we were just doing a pure list of guys that I think are like the best running backs in the class, no draft capital, none of that stuff, he would be lower than that. I don't think he's the 8th most talented running back in this class. But whenever you factor in draft capital, things like that, I had to put him up higher than where I personally wanted to have him.
Yeah. Before we get out of here tonight, guys, and everyone watching, first of all, we appreciate it. But second of all, just like we did last week with the QBs, we want to go around the frames and highlight one guy outside of the consensus top 10 that we haven't discussed tonight that more people need to be paying attention to throughout this entire process, and then once they're eventually drafted come the end of April. So, JT, you got a gem for us from UTSA to offer up.
I wish for Vince I was talking about Rasho Faison, but I'm not. So he said more discussion of Faison. He's not on my list. He's not my guy. We'll get him in on another one. So I'm sorry, Vince. I'm sorry. I'm not talking about him. But yeah, my guy is Robert Henry Jr., University of Texas San Antonio, UTSA, the Road Runners. Actually, one of my favorite smaller school teams to watch as far as CFF or C2C purposes for the last couple of years. Had some fun players on that team. Here's the reason I like him. Man, this guy, he plays a lot bigger than he is. He came in at the combine at 5'9", 196. If you look at him like at the combine, he looks a whole lot bigger than 196. He is all legs, man. He is thighs. He has got a really nice lower body as far as like his ability to break tackles, stay low. So I think he plays bigger than his actual 196. I was actually a little surprised he came in under 200 on that. Now, not the fastest guy in the world, but he did run a 4.52, which I was pumped about because I was like, man, I know he wasn't a speed demon. I knew it just watching him in college, but I was like, man, anything under like 4.56, which that's what Emmett Johnson ended up running, was a 4.56. He ended up running a 4.52. So I was happy to see that because he's a solid running back, good speed, not great. We knew he wasn't a breakaway speed guy. So I love that about him. And then just the other thing, he was kind of the horse that carried them for UTSA. He really was a stud. He had a monster game against Texas A&M, who was one of the top defenses in the entire country, put up 177 and 2 touchdowns against them in a game that they were expected to just get annihilated and never be in it. To me, that was a big one for him, showing that he could do it against a big-time opponent. Now, he is a fifth-year guy, so he's a little bit older, so that's why he's going to drop a little bit for me there. But he is a workhorse type of back. I like what he did at that program. I think he's a late-round guy, probably a 6th rounder if I had to guess, maybe a 6th, 7th rounder. I could see him possibly going a little higher just because how the depth on this draft class is not as high as last year's. There's guys that went in the 6th, 7th last year that would have been in my top 5 or 6 this year. I'm not even going to lie to you. I liked last year's class so much. That was one of my favorite running back. That's one of my favorite running back classes of all time. But I do really like him. I think he's a guy that can catch on a team. He's a guy that went to small school. So he was awesome in Mississippi, but he went to a 1A school, man. So he was a guy who was trying to work his way up from the bottom as playing small town competition. I just really like where he's at. Personally, I have him as running back 8, which I think is probably the highest of anyone anywhere. I just really like his ability. He reminds me of Ray Davis from a couple years ago. I loved Ray Davis coming out of Kentucky. He hasn't had quite the success that Ray Davis did being able to run for what he did at Kentucky and Vanderbilt at the SEC level. But I think he's that type of grinder, a guy that is just a baller, wants to go out there and play and prove himself. I like him in that range. So he's definitely a guy I'm going to be looking at. If the right team gets him, where I can use him as a handcuff, put him on my taxi squad, and put him behind a guy that's one of my starters, I'm going to probably be on him just for that reason.
Oh, for what it's worth, 53 draft eligible running backs with at least 100 carries. He was second in yards per carry, fourth in yards after contact per attempt, and first in breakaway run percentage. So
that's what I love. Drew, that's a great stat. I was going to say, even though you watch the film, you can tell he's not ridiculously fast. I mean, it's obvious that he's not like the biggest burner, but he gets out there and he moves. Like he made some big runs for a guy that isn't super fast.
Yeah, it's the pass catching leaves a lot to be desired. There's not really much there, but as a 2-down back, he's a damn good runner. So I like what I saw a lot from him on that standpoint. I have him as running back 10, so not quite as high as you are, but I'm not too far behind you either.
Yeah. Speaking, pointing, Drew, to your point, pointing to the elite breakaway speed numbers for Robert Henry Jr. I saw this the other day. He had at least a 70-plus yard games in each of his first 70-plus yard run, in each of his first 4 games at UTSA last year in a row. So, legit breakaway speed in the open field. Joe,
that's hard to do against any competition. So
man.
Again, they were playing some heavy hitters early in the season. So I mean, they played Texas A&M in there, like you said, 177 and 2 touches against an unreal Texas A&M team. I was going ballistic watching that in my fantasy leagues. But yeah, he played pretty well against some tough competition this year. So he's a guy, like, if you like the Kyle Manon guy or someone like that late in the draft, I'm like, man, he's a guy that I don't know what he's going to do, but man, I would love to get him and stash him. I'd love to get him on big roster where I can put him on a taxi squad for a year or 2 and see what happens.
Yeah. Moving to another analyst here, Joe. This is a guy that just a couple of years ago, everyone said, oh, this guy is awesome. Future first or second round pick. And now people left him completely for dead and couldn't care less about him.
Yeah, I don't even think my guy was invited. Was he invited to the combine?
Nope.
Jaden Ott.
He was
I don't think so.
The former Cal Bear, and last year,
what happened?
In theory, was on Oklahoma's team. He got hurt going in 2024 pretty early, like I think in the preseason, and then just couldn't recover fully. Tried to push through at Cal or West Virginia. No, I'm
Cal.
He was a Cal guy. Yeah, he was at Cal.
Who's the West Virginia running back?
Jaheim White. He went back to school. Yeah, he's at North Texas this year. Yeah,
this color scheme threw me there for a second.
I know they looked exactly the same. They're similar style and size players, so I can see the confusion.
Yeah. But with Ott going into 2024, I thought he was in a similar tier as a little behind, but similar tier as Genty, Hampton, Judkins. I actually liked him more than Travion Henderson going into the year. Injuries happened. Like you said, he could have been a first, second round pick in that range, but then injuries happened. He fell off, went to Oklahoma, more injuries, lack of recovery. Then at the Senior Bowl, he was, I thought, pretty easily the best running back there. So Mike Washington has a claim there too, but Ott really looked like himself again. I was really happy he got that invite to either that or the Shrine Bowl, but he looked like himself. Great speed when he's healthy, really dynamic receiving back. And I think he really could be a true 3-down all-around back if he does recover fully. So for a guy who's probably going to go in the 5th, 6th round, I really like him as an upside shot. Le'Veon Moss kind of in a similar situation, very different players, but both guys who had legit second-round hype going into this year, last year, just injuries took it away from them. But Ott is a guy I loved, so you know what? Why not? Maybe I'll take a lot of third-round flyers on him, which is a little early, but who cares in this class? Yeah. So,
I was an absolute stud at California his first 2 years. It seemed like the transfer to Oklahoma was just going to put him over the top, and he just couldn't get on the field there. I tell you what, and
a lot of that was health. It wasn't benching.
It was health. It was health. But I tell you what, man, Oklahoma has really struggled to develop running backs the last 5 or 6 years. They've had so many studs go there, and it just seems like none of the guys produce. They all end up having to go somewhere else. So I don't know if that's a coaching issue or what's happening there. But man, they've had so many guys that we've seen there the last couple of years going, oh man, I can't wait to see this guy. Can't wait to see this guy. And they either don't get on the field, they get hurt, or when they are on the field, there's an issue and they end up getting pulled. It's been a really weird thing, remembering all the stud Oklahoma running backs over the years. It's been really weird the last couple of years how much talent they've had and how much it's just been an issue all around with any of these guys actually getting to their like max potential.
Yeah, if Ott can tap back into his early years, to your point, Joe, like Cal and JT, then we could have a fantastic value on our hand in both the real NFL and, more specifically for our purposes, Dynasty rookie draft. Drew, you're a Kentucky guy, so tell us why you love Seth McGowan so much.
Yeah, so I talked about with Mike Washington, like if we were just ranking these guys purely on how good we thought they were at the position, that Washington would be lower for me. Seth McGowan would be higher than I already have him, just in terms of like being a really good running back. But with McGowan, it's not that simple. Like you can't just do it like that. Like he had a really solid true freshman season at Oklahoma, over almost 600 total yards and 4 touchdowns as a freshman, but ended up being released from Oklahoma because of the legal trouble. He pleaded guilty to a larceny charge. Just brutal stuff after a very impressive freshman season. And then, he worked through some smaller schools, eventually ended up at New Mexico State in 2024 and then finished at Kentucky for his final college season in 2025.
Together,
yeah, for a year. That was
they were both at New Mexico State. They were both Aggies.
Yeah. We don't have to talk about who outperformed who in that scenario.
Okay, enough.
Just saying. But all that whole path, all that leads to the fact that McGowan is going to be 26 years of age during his rookie season in the NFL. And that is obviously less than ideal for dynasty leagues. And so I couldn't really have him much higher than I did because of that. So those are really his 2 biggest red flags. I would say his age and his legal troubles. But man, if this dude is not just a damn good running back though, and I'm trying not to let my Kentucky bias show here. I'm really not. But even if you look across his entire college career, he finished with over 5 yards per carry, almost 11 yards per reception, 1.56 yards per route run, all extremely solid numbers. As far as his on the field red flags, he doesn't have blow you away high end speed, but he's still fast enough to break off chunk plays. Like he can gain big chunks of yards. He's going to get caught from behind eventually, but he's got a 3-down skill set. He's great around the goal line. He's shown that he can handle a big workload. It is concerning that the efficiency continued to decrease. I don't know if all the time in college started to wear on him or what the case was, but you would have liked to see the efficiency continue to improve as he went along in that, but that wasn't the case. But I think he's a really good damn running back, man. I think that he can play all 3 downs. I think you can trust him around the goal line. You can trust him with a lot of volume. If you need to plug him in there for 20, 30 touches in a game, he can handle it. Man, I've got him as my running back 9 right now, but I'm not sure how high I'd have this guy if he was just a couple years younger. So RB9,
RB2.
I see enough as it is. Yeah, he'd be my Mike Washington if he was just a couple years younger.
Yeah, I want to touch on the whole Indiana backfield situation here because Roman Hendy was the receiving back there, and the guy I want to zero in on here is a true value that we haven't talked about yet is Kalen Black. Another guy, for whatever reason, just like I didn't get invited to the combine at the end of this past weekend. I don't even know, to be fully transparent with you, I don't even know if Kalen Black gets drafted. But I look at the running back position. I don't think he does anything at a great level, but I think he's more of a jack of all trades, minus the lack of receiving ability, obviously, where he does everything at a good enough level. I think he's a very good pass protector, and I think he's very good in short yardage goal line situations between the tackles. So if there's one guy I want to bet on, even that might not get drafted at best, very late day 3, I'm going to go with Kalen Black. Okay, guys. Well, that was fun. That's a wrap on our RB conversation. We went over the top 10. We went over a few lingering guys, and then a few of our my guys labels, if you will. So, as one final reminder for all of you watching out there, please head over to our site, fantasyandframes.com, where we have a multitude of topics for any and all fantasy avenues and topics you can think of. And most importantly, this time of year, for all of our analysts here and from a consensus perspective, our first run-through / batch of rookie rankings for every single position as well. Please note, Dynasty 365 is back tomorrow night, that being Wednesday night for you all watching out there, to discuss and preview the upcoming 2026 NFL free agent class on the offensive side of the ball, of course, at multiple skill positions from a dynasty lens and dynasty perspective. And then next Tuesday night, as always, we are back with another edition of Rookie Rankings, same exact time, 10 p.m. Eastern, hour or so, to discuss our wide receiver rankings, which everyone loves to talk about for fantasy, obviously.
Won't get contested at all.
No,
not at all.
Another Mike Washington situation. So anyway,
Kyle Lemon sucks. Just kidding. He's great. He's
okay,
great.
Save it for next week. Save it. Drew, Drew, already preparing. Drew, is there anything you would like to let the people know where they can find you and what you have going on right now?
I mean, on Twitter at Drew3MR. I do have a Dynasty wide receiver value article in the works that should be on the site by, I would say, mid next week at the latest, I would think. I'm working on that right now. So going to have that out hopefully. And then we're just a couple weeks away from Fourth and Frames, our redraft show, getting back on the airwaves once free agency rolls around. So, just a few weeks away from that, looking forward to that. But other than that, going to be here hanging out with you guys. So looking forward to talking wide receivers next week. That should be a little bit more fun than the running back class was.
For myself, quickly, I want to go over the last couple weeks, I've been pumping out free agent articles for running backs, receivers, and then we're going to finish up later this week with QBs and tight ends to preview from a redraft perspective the free agent class. I am previewing the positions specifically, but I'm putting a fun twist on it where I explore two different avenues. What would said players' 2026 fantasy outlook be like if they stayed with the current team? And what would it be like if they changed current teams? And I also pinpoint what that specific team could be. So I have that going on lately. If you would like to find out more details and just other fun conversations and opinions, you can follow me on Twitter /X at @Weingartner13 for all stuff over there. Joe, is there anything you got going on right now?
Similar to Drew, I've got a couple articles for discounts coming out in the next couple of weeks, some risers and fallers. You can find me on the interwebs at JoLo63. Remember to brush and floss.
JT, finish us out.
Yeah, I've got a couple IDP articles coming out on Fantasy and Frame, so check those out. Also, if you are a Dynasty League football member, I've got my top 75 Devy on there. I've got my top 25 IDP rookie rankings up there, as well as my top 150 IDP rankings. Go to Fantasy Pros if you want to check out our rankings. We got them up there, but we also have them on the website. Constantly updating those as I'm looking more at stuff. And then I've got a bunch of combine articles coming out on DLF. So if you are just looking at like overall combine stuff, my thoughts, risers and fallers, I've got offense and defense IDP going there as well. And we're moving from prospect rankings to rookie rankings, right? These guys are prospects. They're going to be rookies here pretty soon. Ton of rookie articles set over here over the next couple months as these guys eventually get drafted and we get ready for our Dynasty rookie drafts. Doing mocks all day, all the time. If you want to see how some of those mocks are coming out, I've been trying to post those on my X page, Twitter page, at JTOrg. So if you're looking about just scoring, kind of seeing where some of these guys are going, some people say that the rookie mocks before the draft are completely worthless. I disagree. I want to see kind of where people are feeling out about guys. And then once they get drafted, I want to get that balance, right? I want to feel that balance of like, okay, I like this guy pre-draft. He fell way farther than I thought. I still need to keep him in my rankings. I need to know where he's at, but maybe I can get him later. This other guy, I'm going to have to either move up or back. So I do think it's worthwhile because you can kind of see where these guys go early and then late. You don't want to forget about some guys. I've had that happen where I'm like, oh, I thought I was going to take this guy mid-second round. Then he goes way later in the NFL draft, and you kind of forget about him, and then you're like sitting in the 5th round, you're like, I should have grabbed that guy in the 4th round. What was I thinking? So definitely, I think it's worthwhile. So all kinds of mock drafts still going on out there. That's it for me, though.
Yeah, all fun stuff, guys, for all you watching it there coming down the pipeline here. But for myself, for Drew, JT, and Joe, we will see you all next week.